Let's welcome on our guest line, back to the Mike Gallagher Show, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, welcome back. How you been?
I'm doing terrific, Mike. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I saw a report, I think it was in the Washington Post, that says you have too chummy a relationship with talk radio hosts, so maybe I should start screaming at you. Would that maybe that make the Washington Post happy? I don't know.
Well, look, listen, the mainstream media, they don't like the competition you guys give because y'all are actually listening to the people and talking to the people, and you know, most of the mainstream media, they get scared if they get around real people in America.
Well, Ted, you know, I've got to ask you, Senator, Rich Lowry, who's not a radio host, he writes that you are an absolute threat for the nomination. You have, and he goes through the whole list of the strength of your operation. You had more cash on hand at the end of the third quarter than any other Republican. You've got major super PAC backing. You assessed and correctly recognized the anti-establishment mood in the party more accurately than the other candidates. You've deftly handled the Trump Carson phenomenon. It's got to be encouraging to you, Senator, to read a voice like Rich Lowry and hear that he says, "Hey, Ted Cruz could actually be the real deal and get the Republican nomination."
Well, Mike, it's very encouraging, and it's consistent with what we're seeing every day. The momentum behind the campaign right now is phenomenal, and what we're seeing is more and more we're seeing conservatives uniting behind our campaign, and that has been a process that has been steadily happening. And, you know, historically there have been two lanes in the Republican primary. There's been a moderate lane and a conservative lane. And in past elections, typically there was a consensus moderate candidate early on. All the money gets behind that candidate. And with conservatives, typically there are a bunch of us. Nobody has any money, and we fight like cats and dogs. And that's how the moderate tends to go on to win the nomination, and then they lose the general because millions of conservatives stay home and don't vote.
Right.
This election, Mike, that whole thing's flipped. The moderate lane is unbelievably crowded. There are 4, 5, 6 people in there that are slugging it out. They're going to spend millions of dollars ripping each other apart. Nobody knows who's going to win the moderate lane right now. But right now, the moderates are behaving like conservatives. It's a wonderful process. And on the conservative side, the two candidates who've dropped out, Rick Perry, Scott Walker, both good men, strong governors, both were competing predominantly in the conservative lane. Other candidates that were expected to be formidable in that lane are not getting meaningful traction. And what we're seeing consistently is conservatives uniting behind our campaign. We're raising money like crazy. In the last fundraising quarter, we had more money in the bank than any Republican in the field. That hasn't happened for a conservative, and it's because we've had over 450,000 contributions at tedcruz.org. People all over the country going to tedcruz.org. That is very encouraging because if conservatives stand together, if we simply unite, we win.
Let's talk about something that isn't so encouraging right now. Donald Trump blasting Ben Carson over details of his past and all of that, and they're going back and forth pretty vociferously. Again, you've avoided that, and that's the sort of why I've related to you in a way through this campaign, because from day one I've said as a talk show host, let's not get into this circular firing squad. It's destructive. Democrats love that. Is that to your advantage to watch Mr. Trump and Dr. Carson, the two front runners right now in many of the polls, go at each other?
Oh, listen, I like both Donald Trump and Ben Carson. I've gotten to know them both quite well, and I like and respect them. As you noted, I have consistently avoided engaging in personal attacks or ad hominem attacks. I don't think they have any place in politics, and so you know, there have been a number of Republican candidates that have gone after Donald Trump, that have gone after Ben Carson. I am not one of them, and I don't intend to be one of them. I don't think that's what we should be focusing on. Now, I'll say on the flip side, you know, you look at the debate we had just a few days ago. I think this was the best debate we've had to date because it got into substance, and you saw some real divides on substance. That should be the meat of politics. It is the heart of what we're doing. And it is perfectly appropriate. So this last debate, for example, you saw a clear divide between a majority of the candidates on that stage who have supported amnesty and my record, which is the only person on that stage who has consistently opposed amnesty and indeed who led the fight against the massive amnesty proposal in the Senate just a couple of years ago when establishment Republicans joined with Democrats in trying to pass amnesty.
And
I think that's a healthy debate and what we should be talking about.
It's a good conversation, and there's been a back and forth between you and Senator Rubio on this because, Senator Rubio's support for the Gang of Eight bill, some say has made him a bit vulnerable on the issue of immigration. But by the same token, you've been criticized for your past support of the H-1B visa program. Can you speak to that, Senator Cruz?
Well, look, my position on immigration has been crystal clear from day one. When Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid and Barack Obama joined with a handful of establishment Republicans to push the massive Gang of Eight bill, that was a moment where everyone decided, what side do you stand on? Where are you? It was a gut check moment. Mm-hmm. It was a moment that revealed exactly what someone believes. In the Senate, from day one, I led the fight against the Gang of Eight amnesty bill. Stood shoulder to shoulder with Jeff Sessions, introduced amendment after amendment after amendment designed to stop the Gang of Eight amnesty bill, and we succeeded. We defeated it, and I would note, going back to where you started, with the tremendous help of talk radio hosts, of folks focusing on the consequences of granting amnesty to millions of people here illegally. That was the fundamental fight. And, I have to say yesterday, Marco had a fairly remarkable comment in that he suggested that my record was exactly like his in immigration. And I have to admit, I laughed out loud at that. That was, Marco's a friend, but that statement was truly stunning. I mean, that's like Obama saying my position is the same as his on Obamacare. Mm-hmm. That's like the Ayatollah Khamenei saying my position is the same as his on the Iranian nuclear deal. It is laughingly, blazingly, on its face false.
But as you said, it's an important conversation to have because clearly the immigration issue is what, in my view, has propelled Donald Trump to the top of the heap right now because this issue resonates with the American people. But it seems to me that you've been very careful and you've been very specific and detailed in recognizing, I don't want to say nuances, but there are layers to this. I mean, back, if we can, to this H-1B visa program. Sure. This is a tough issue. It's kind of a complicated issue. Walk us through this H-1B visa issue and where you stand on it today.
Yeah. Look, the H-1B visa program was designed to bring in very high-skilled workers, to bring in computer scientists and PhD electrical engineers. And if the program were operating as it's designed, it would be positive and beneficial in generating jobs and economic growth. That's the plan, and I support the program as it was originally designed. Unfortunately, what we have seen in recent months has been report after report after report of stunning abuses of the H-1B program, of big companies, marquee name companies, not bringing in very high-skilled computer scientists and engineers, but bringing in relatively low-skilled IT workers, sometimes with a bachelor's degree, sometimes from a diploma mill, replacing American workers, and most shockingly, forcing the American workers to train these immigrants who are taking their jobs on the way out the door.
Right.
That is utterly unacceptable. It is wrong. It is an abuse of the program. It is a manifestation of, frankly, the lawlessness of the Obama administration. Not only do they push for amnesty for illegal immigrants, but they also are not prosecuting the companies that are violating the laws. And that is wrong. I am working right now with Jeff Sessions on major reform legislation to the H-1B program because this will not be allowed to happen. If I am elected president, the H-1B program will not be used to replace American workers, and if it is, any company that attempts to do so will face serious legal penalties and even prosecution.
Senator Ted Cruz with us here on the Mike Gallagher Show. Senator, I have a friend in North Texas who is so passionate, and I hear this every day about your candidacy. He's actually traveling to Iowa in January to volunteer for your campaign. A lot of people say, boy, we'd love to see Ted Cruz up on that debate stage with Hillary Clinton at some point. I have to share with you, I'm sure you've heard this story, but she tells the story this week about how as a young 20-something-year-old, she wanted to become a Marine. Here's what she said happened when she talked to the Marine recruiter.
He looks at me and he goes, how old are you? And I said, well, I'm 26. I'll be 27. And he goes, well, that's kind of old for us. and then he says to me, and he says to me, maybe the dogs will take you, meaning the Army.
Wow. Senator Cruz, who knew? I mean, as she was protesting the Vietnam War and has hardly, it seems, been very embracing of our military over the years, she secretly, I guess, wanted to become a member of the Marine Corps.
Well, Secretary Clinton has always had, shall we say, a flexible relationship with the truth. and so that is an interesting narrative. I would note that the people she was speaking to, who I assume were a bunch of Democrats, were laughing. And I suspect more than a few of them were laughing beyond the reason she intended. That is not a scenario I think anyone who has watched Secretary Clinton over the years believes played out as she suggested.
Senator John McCain tweeted out, Hillary in the Marine Corps, well, she did come under sniper fire in Bosnia, right? I mean, there's an audio clip, I don't know if you've ever heard it, of Senator Clinton once morphing into this black dialect where she was reading a hymn. I mean, an old spiritual, an old black spiritual. There's a strange, she does, it's fascinating to kind of look at her as a candidate. Much has been written about sort of how carefully orchestrated everything is, and everything is very, designed for one. It's almost like she's like a machine.
Well, it is a cynical approach to politics, and one of the dynamics that's simple is conservatives win when we effectively articulate what it is we believe. Mm-hmm. Liberals win when they effectively obfuscate what they believe, when they hide what they believe. And the reason is simple. The American people, our values are fundamentally conservative. This is a center-right country built on Judeo-Christian values. And even though the media tries to tell us over and over again that America has suddenly embraced leftist progressive values, it is a lie. They know it's a lie. So Hillary Clinton doesn't campaign as a leftist, anti-war radical, which she has been much of her life. Instead, she's campaigning as a Marine. I mean that's just classic, and it's one of the reasons, Mike, I'm so confident about this election. If we nominate a strong conservative, we will win, because anyone listening to her say that knows she's not telling the truth, and people are tired of being lied to. The reason our campaign is getting so much support, the most frequent thing I hear as I travel the country is people say, well, you're doing what you said you would do. You're telling the truth, and you're doing what you said you would do. Mm-hmm. That's what we've got to do to win. And it's, by the way, also why this amnesty issue is so important.
Right.
If Republicans nominate a candidate who has embraced amnesty just like Hillary Clinton, we give away one of the major distinctions in this next election. If we do that, we will lose. I'll tell you this. You talked about that debate stage, Mike. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to stand on that debate stage and make abundantly clear, if you vote for Hillary Clinton, 12 million people who are here illegally will get amnesty. If you vote for me, they will not.
Absolutely.
If you vote for Hillary Clinton, the Ayatollah Khamenei will get nuclear weapons. If you vote for me, he will not. That's how we win a general election.
I want to close back to this with this Rich Lowry piece. He writes, you light up pretty much every conservative audience you address. You're an excellent debater. You simply don't make tactical or rhetorical mistakes. And yet the political press corps made up its mind about you, that you're just too divisive as soon as you showed up in Washington. Is that, do you think, the reason the mainstream media has a tough time accepting Ted Cruz as the Republican nominee for president?
Listen, the mainstream media is terrified by principled, effective conservatives. They like their Republicans timid and housebroken, to sit in the corner and be scared. The word divisive is a classic code word in Washington. Mm-hmm. What the pundits are saying is we need to nominate someone who is well liked in Washington. Goodness gracious, you know how you're well liked in Washington? You don't do anything. You suck up to Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid and Barack Obama, and you don't rock the boat. That's how you're well liked in Washington. If you stand up against the Washington cartel and with the American people, that means you're divisive in the media's language, and that is lunacy. You talk about issues that matter. Let me mention one issue that is a passion of mine, which is religious liberty. And for 2 decades, I have been leading the fight defending religious liberty. This Saturday in South Carolina at Bob Jones University, noon this Saturday, we're having a rally for religious liberty. I know you've got a ton of listeners in and around Bob Jones. I would encourage anyone that is around there this Saturday at noon, come join us. The information is on our website. It's tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. And the doors open at 10:30, but we're going to have a ton of folks like Tony Perkins, like the Benham brothers, Dr. Michael Brown, Vince Coakley, Kelly Shackelford, and then we're going to have heroes from across the country who have stood for their faith and have been persecuted. And I'll tell you, if you join us, it will be uplifting, it will speak to your spirit, and you will be inspired by ordinary people who stood by their faith against government persecution. That's what we need to do, is stand for our principles, stand for our faith, and stand for the Constitution.
Senator Ted Cruz, we always are grateful for the time you have for us on the campaign trail. Keep up the good fight. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, my friend.
Take care. Senator Ted Cruz here on the Mike Gallagher Show.